Welcome back, everybody. This is Chapter 12 of Price Analysis, a fundamental approach to the study of commodity prices. In this chapter, we take a look at how important production in South America has become in commodity markets, especially for corn, soybeans, and wheat. Then we'll show you what resources exist to follow along with how commodity markets are doing in South America. Essentially, we'll show you how to find the reports that are analogous to our own USDA reports, but that exist in Brazil and Argentina in particular, that allow you to follow along with the progress of that crop. Before we get into that, though, let's take a look at a few figures that illustrate the rise of South American production, particularly from Brazil and Argentina. Here on the screen we've got Figure 1 that show the top world producers of corn. We see the United States there in blue is the dominant producer, and China is number 2 in terms of the width that they occupy on Figure 1. But you can see that Brazil in purple and Argentina in blue, they are gaining a larger and larger share of that production, or their bands are getting wider and wider. So that's illustrated there. In Figure 2, we look at the markets in a little bit different way. We've plotted the top world exporters of corn. So not just the top producers, but those who are exporting the most. Again, in blue, you'll see that the United States is the largest world exporter of corn. And you'll see the entities in the top 5 are a little bit different. We had China and the European Union drop out from Figure 1 to Figure 2. So they were large producers of corn, but not exporting corn. Taking their place in the top 5 exporters chart is Russia and the Ukraine. And you can see that production in the Ukraine has increased dramatically. Exports from the Ukraine have increased dramatically since the early 2000s. But also you can see that exports out of Brazil and Argentina are also becoming an increasingly important share of world exports. Next, in Table 1, we just list the top 10 producers of corn in 2017. And just to give you a sense of the broader market structure, we have the United States and China, which are by and large producing much more corn than the third place entity. And then rounding out the top 10, we have the EU, Argentina, Ukraine, Mexico, India, Russia, and Canada. All right, now in Figures 3 and 4, let's do the same thing for soybeans. So again, in Figure 3, we've got the top 5 world producers of soybeans. And you see the blue on the bottom again is the United States. And then the next 2 lines are yellow and orange, India and China, with a small ribbon. And then you see what really jumps out at you on this chart is the explosion in production from Brazil and Argentina together. So you can see just from these charts that we've already seen South American production in the soybean market is really the big part of this story in the rise of South American production. They have become a more important part of world corn production, but really the story is driven by what's happening in South America in the soybean market. Now in Figure 4, we'll shift again to looking at the top world exporters of soybeans, and then this story becomes even more dramatic. You see the United States there on the bottom. For the last 20 years and beyond, we've been the dominant world exporter of soybeans, but since about 2008 or 10, we've been roughly exporting the same amount as Brazil. So Brazil and the United States are vying for number 1, number 2, being the world's largest exporter of soybeans. And we see increases from Argentina, but nothing on the scale of what we've seen from Brazil. Brazil has become an exceptionally important player in the world soybean market, and this chart just illustrates why really, really cleanly. Now here in Table 2, I've just listed again the top 10 producers of soybeans in the world, and unsurprisingly there you see the United States, Brazil, and Argentina as the top 3. Then China and India come next. And we've got Paraguay, Canada, Ukraine, Russia, and Bolivia. So it's interesting to see that although they don't make the top 5, we have these 2 other smaller South American countries, Paraguay and Bolivia, who are actually quite important in the world market. They're making the top 10 anyway. Now, if we remember our geography, we will not be surprised by the fact that Paraguay and Bolivia are also important producers of soybeans, because it turns out that the most important production regions in Brazil are right through here. We'll see that in some figures that come later. And so if you just kind of include this central area, Bolivia and Paraguay are going to be really important parts of this productive region. And when we get down into talking about Argentinian production, it's really northern Argentina that is most important as a crop producer. So we've got this area right here that is really driving this discussion about South American production.